Our internet freedoms are being threatened right now by people pushing to get the FCC to undo Title II protection of the internet, and that could really limit our internet freedoms. But it's not too late to take action. And don't think there's no point in taking action. After I show several clips of people talking about the importance of maintaining net neutrality, I'm going to show you a really dirty tactic of a company which tricked activists into sending a message to the FCC they thought was in support of net neutrality, but it was actually asking the FCC to undo Title II protections.
At this moment, when our democratic institutions are in peril, ending net neutrality protections would be devastating.
Cable companies see getting rid of net neutrality as a way to squeeze more money out of internet users and businesses.
Right now, a handful of internet service providers dominate. They've got deep pockets and few competitors. Without strong net neutrality supported by a solid legal foundation, Title II of the Communications Act, these companies can pretty much do anything with their internet pipes. Block traffic, charge for priority service, and favor their own content.
Once again, another example of what we constantly see. Companies and money over freedom and people. For those of you that have not heard me speak on this before, or maybe you just figured out what the internet is, the idea of net neutrality is a free and open internet. It makes it so ISPs like Verizon, AT&T, Uverse, Comcast, all of these big players can't control what we do online. Back in 2015, a lot of people felt that the internet was in a much safer place. In 2015, thanks to a massive movement, the FCC labeled broadband internet no longer a Title I, but a Title II. This made it essentially a utility. It put into place rules that prevented providers like those Comcast and those Verizons from blocking, throttling, making fast lanes.
I just want people to understand, just in case you're not 100% clear, what throttling means. We all know the speeds of internet matter, right? So if you want, like if I had JimmyDoreComedy.com, which I do, and I want to have a video go up there and go fast, as say a video does on Netflix, they could start charging, hey, do you want your video to go fast? Well, we're going to charge you a premium. Well, I can't afford the premium because I'm just a small company. Well, Netflix can afford the premium. YouTube can afford the premium. So they can charge you more money. And so what that does is screw small content providers or small companies because they won't be able. And so now we'll all be on slower internet, so people will click on our website and it'll load slower and they'll be like, F this, and they'll go to a faster, which only rich corporations will be able to afford. So you see the problem, right? So now they found a way to get rid of independent voices on the internet. That's really what this is. Again, another way to get rid of independent voices.
Concentrations of power have ways of directing use of the internet towards their own concerns and interests. The pop-ups, the advertising, endless number of ways. Right now, a live issue is whether the corporations to whom the internet was given, it's developed within the public domain for about 30 years and handed over to corporations free gift, whether they will be allowed to determine, the providers will be allowed to determine who gets easy access and who gets difficult access. That's a live issue right now. If they win that battle, they have much more control over the internet. But the struggle to keep the internet free and open is quite important. It's been a valuable tool, has its downside, but it's been a valuable tool, and very valuable tool, undoubtedly.
All of the amazing innovation and growth on the internet didn't just happen while we had net neutrality, it happened because of it. I hope that the American people will remain willing to speak up and ultimately counter the deep-pocketed ISPs and the politicians who seek to undermine net neutrality.
Here's what people have said the internet would look like without net neutrality. This is kind of like a dystopian future of what it may look like.
It's a lot like cable television where you have to pay for HBO.
That's exactly right. These big companies, Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, they are trying to own the internet. They want to own and control the internet. And this is what it's going to look like. Eventually, you have to pay $5 extra for the access to the search engines. Or you have to pay $5 extra so that they are quick enough that you can use.
Yeah.
Right now, this is illegal under FCC's rules. But without the principle of net neutrality, which is what everyone's fighting for, this is something that's very real and very possible, and some things that are already happening today. So from the beginning, the FCC regulated the internet with their general rules known as net neutrality principle. The FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission, they control all the utilities and they regulate it and they say what you can't do. And essentially, it's there to protect consumers. Americans who consume these products. So in the very beginning of the internet, when it started becoming widely used, they had this rule called neutrality principles, which the thing was that it was a free and open internet that shouldn't be grabbed and controlled by big companies like Verizon. And incidentally, they started getting challenged by companies like Verizon. In 2014, a court ruled that FCC had no authority to up until 2014. FCC had some control over this. In 2014, Verizon sued the FCC, and a court ruled that they had no authority to enforce network neutrality rules because the internet was not considered a Title II utility like telephones, buses, taxis, etc., which is like a service that exists for the public good.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more restrictions and regulations on what big companies can do with that service.
Yeah.
Previously, it was a Title I utility, which I think is, like you said, cable. It's not a public utility, really. It's just entertainment. But the internet is clearly much more than that.
Yeah. At this point, it's like just like
it's life.
Yeah.
It's like the blood of our economy, of our society. It's more of a public utility than anything that's ever existed. If you compare it to telephone lines or sewage or anything, it's as much as that as anything that's ever existed and way more.
Yeah.
The FCC's new order established a standard that required internet providers to take no action that unreasonably interfered or disadvantaged consumers or the companies whose sites and apps they're trying to access. This was deemed in 2015 when it became a Title II. At most, internet providers may slow down services for the purpose of reasonable network management. That was the only reason they could throttle internet services, not a business purpose. So now, this year, Trump's appointee, Chairman Pei, wants to ditch the Title II and return to the FCC's light touch Title I approach. The current chair of the FCC wants to give the control of the internet back to the companies. And the thing is, like, people say, well, if you go back before, it was fine. And I think the counter argument to that is that before Verizon sued the FCC and the court said, well, you can't actually regulate this because it's Title I, which is a fair ruling considering that it's true. The FCC had more control over the internet. But there was this legal precedent that took control away from them. And so the need for it to stay a Title II became greater. So now they want to go back to how it was, except with this legal precedent, the companies can run amok.
Now is the time to stand together and stop this attempt to auction off the internet to the highest corporate bidders, to dismantle protections that keep the internet a space for the open exchange of ideas and information and free of discrimination. Let's stand up, let's fight back, and let's protect net neutrality.
You can take action right now by sending a message to the FCC saying that you don't want them to get rid of Title II protections. And as I said at the beginning of this video, it's not too late to do it. You may have heard about the day of action on July 12th, but the good news is that July 12th was not the deadline for contacting the FCC. The actual deadline is August 16th. So what can we do? Well, click right here for the action page, or you can find that same link in the video description. That link brings you to the page, Tell the FCC to Keep Net Neutrality. When you get to that page, click here to tell the FCC to keep net neutrality. Now, before you go to that page, below is a sample message you can copy and paste into the brief comments section on the Express page. So you can highlight it and copy it. Now you click on the FCC link and it brings you to this page. Now remember, you click on the Express button right here, and then that brings you to this page where you fill out your name, email address, street address, and then in the brief comments section, you could write your own comment in support of Title II protection of net neutrality, or you can paste in the text I wrote on that previous page. Also, other actions you can take is to use the YouTube tools to share this video with as many people as you can. Because remember, there were people that were tricked by AT&T on the day of action to send a message against the current rules. See, the company even created a form for people to send an automated message to the FCC. The text of the letter actually supports the new FCC policy. That's Chairman Pei's policy to get rid of Title II protection. That's the opposite of the aim of the tech companies and the civil rights groups organizing the day of action for net neutrality. The message I'm suggesting to send to the FCC points out to the FCC the dirty trick AT&T used. The text of the message says, I want the FCC to keep Title II. I understand that many people were tricked by AT&T into sending the FCC a message which is opposite of what they wanted. Please keep that in mind when you are reading messages saying, get rid of the current rules. I want to be clear. I want to keep Title II and the protections it gives consumers from abuses from ISPs, Internet Service Providers. Many people sent messages during the day of action, and I want you to realize that the purpose was to send a message telling the FCC to preserve the rules. AT&T hijacked that day of action by tricking people into sending a message saying, "Get rid of the current rules," when people thought they were sending a message in support of net neutrality and Title II protections. I, along with many other people, want to keep Title II to ensure we keep net neutrality.